Welcome in, everyone. When you hear that music, it's time to enter the dojo. And I'm glad you're here with us today. But before we get into tonight's episode, I want to quickly mention the FSA and rookie guide that we've been working on hard behind the scenes. And if you're looking to get ahead in your dynasty leagues and really want to understand the incoming class, this guide is packed with scouting profiles and high-end analysis. It's available right now for just $10, and the link will be pinned in the comments and down in the description. And as always, the best way to stay connected with the dojo and engage with the community is by joining the free Devy Dojo Discord. That's where we talk Devy, Dynasty, scouting, everything in between every single day. And if you're already in the Discord, here's something to look forward to. Next week's episode is going to feature a Devy mock draft with brand new members of the community. So if you want to be a part of future episodes like that, make sure that you jump into that Discord. Again, both links will be pinned down below in the description. But all right, let's get into tonight's show, because tonight we've got a very special guest joining us, someone who's a respected voice in the Devy community and a personal friend of ours. Honestly, like I told you, one of the biggest inspirations behind us starting the Devy Dojo in the first place. He's the one and only Cory P, host of the Back to Devy podcast, and someone who's been grinding in this space for years. So we're fired up to finally have him here with us. Cory, welcome to the dojo.
Man, I'm pumped to be here in the dojo with you guys. Like I was saying off camera here, I've been watching your guys' attention, throughout the past year. Love the content you're putting out. Always nice to see new faces in the industry, especially smart ones like yourselves. The show, it's great production value. It's a cool overall theme, great graphics. I'm just glad to finally link up with you guys.
Love it, man. Appreciate the kind words. And now I'll kick it over to my guy here, the Shifu, Chris. What's going on? Go ahead and break down for the people what we've got on tap for tonight.
Yeah, definitely honored to have Cory on. He's one of the greatest minds in the Devy space. So this has been a long time coming. We're happy to have you. One of the first guests, too, because we've only just recently started actually getting guests on the podcast. So we appreciate you being able to jump on. And this is going to be a really fun one to talk with you about, because we are focused today on transfers. So a lot has gone on. We all know how the college game has changed in the past few years with the transfer portal. And it seems like anybody who isn't going to the draft is jumping somewhere else at this point. So there's a lot of talent that we're going to discuss today, 9 players to be exact, that have moved teams in the last couple of months. And we want to discuss what they have done previously and what that might translate to for Devy values and their future outcomes here as they prepare for themselves getting to the NFL draft. So this should be a very good episode with 3 ball-knowing boys.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and we'll start off with the first one there, Chris. Mr. Drew Mestemaker. And Cory, this was your guy, so go ahead and talk dirty to me about Mr. Mestemaker.
Well, again, I appreciate the kind word, guys. Glad to be here again. But Drew Mestemaker, this kid is a great story. Going from North Texas, now hopping up to Oklahoma State this year. This is a kid who did not start in high school, 0-star recruit. Like, this kid had 0 film out of high school, walked on at North Texas, earned a start in the bowl game as a freshman, and then ended up becoming the starting QB the next year for one of the most potent offenses in college football last year. Pretty much ended up passing for the most yards in the country last year. Wasn't even really close to. I think the next closest was like 400 yards. So just shy of 4,400 passing yards, 34 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 5 games over 300 yards, including a 600-yard 4-touchdown game against Charlotte. So very, very gaudy numbers he put up. Fairly low pressure to sack rate, low turnover-worthy play rates. And this kid is a nice-sized kid. He's 6'3", 6'4", depending on where you look, 211 pounds. And, I wouldn't say he's a perfect prospect yet. I actually think if you watch him a little bit, he is a little bit inconsistent as a passer sometimes. I think he has some questionable decision-making at times. There's times I think he's a little bit statuesque in the pocket, but there is times where he does get out of the pocket, climbs, has some nice leg to take advantage of the open field. And not to say that I think rushing will ever be a big part of his game, but I think he's got a snappy release, which I love, of course. And there's even some underrated progression reading that I saw in some of his games, which I like to see. And now we're talking about he gets a shot at the power forward level, trying to bring, a kind of dead Oklahoma State program into relevance here. Following his head coach, by the way, too, and Eric Morris over, as well as, multiple offensive players, which we could have talked about them all on this show. I think we're going to talk about some here, but there will be a lot of familiarity with the scheme and the skill players. And honestly, I'll say I wouldn't even be surprised if it's a little bit slow to start the year. Like we've seen this previously where quarterbacks transfer up from a lower level of competition. It kind of takes a year to really settle in and learn what works and what doesn't at like a faster speed of the game, a higher level competition. But the good news is with him is it doesn't have to happen in 1 year like some of these guys that make the 1 year jump. Mestemaker has 3 years of eligibility remaining. So even if it takes, some time to get there still, he can still get there. He has that time. And I mean, this path it might not even stop at Oklahoma State, right? Once he makes his name for himself, this could be like the Cam Ward path from Incarnate Ward over to Washington State, which was Power 4 at the time, then up to Miami last year, which really ended up boosting his draft stock. So I think it could be a similar career arc for Mestemaker, who I think he's going to be a name that we continue to talk about over the next few years.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And I think he's the best story in college football.
Absolutely.
How often do you hear of a guy who didn't start any varsity games and then is able to make that transition? Albeit like it was a little rough being a 0-star recruit, but he went out there and he balled. And when you have a guy like Eric Morris coaching you, we know the line of quarterbacks that he's produced and that he's coached. And it was like he just stumbled upon Drew Mestemaker. I'm really excited to see him in the Big 12 this year. It seems like the Big 12 is a lot more competitive. You mentioned his frame. He's a little lanky for me, so I would like to see him add some of that functional mass, taking those hits in the pocket. Defenses are naturally going to be a little more faster and hit a little harder at this level. So it's going to be really fun to see that transition. And I did love that you mentioned that first bowl game that he got the start at. I remember, didn't he throw up during that game? Like that infamous, he threw up on the sidelines.
Was that game? Yards. I think he did throw up in that game. Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, it must have just been a really big spotlight moment for him in that game. Man.
Yeah, the nerves, baby. The nerves, man, they got to him. But, I mean, something I didn't really hear you touch on was the wheels and the mobility that he has. And we know translating for fantasy on your dynasty rosters, that's always a gold mine. If you get a guy that has legs like that and then can operate in that air raid type system, oh man, it's wheels up. So great way to start this off, because we are big fans of Mestemaker in the dojo. He just kind of came out of nowhere, man.
Yeah, it's hard not to fall in love with the story. And, and like I said, I don't know if the rushing is going to be a huge part of his game, but it's a good thing to know that at least he can take advantage of some of those open lanes if they do appear, or if he gets out of the pocket a little bit, which I'd like to see him do a little bit more of as well. Like I did find him standing there a little bit, but I think he has some steps to take. But like I said, long time to do it still. He's got himself in a great situation here, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned the rushing too. He did have 5 touchdowns. Obviously, the way that they do rushing stats in college, he only ended up with 89 rushing yards. So maybe not like a true dual threat necessarily, but when you got a little bit of mobility, that's always a fun thing to build on as you become a better passer. The coaching staff can get their hands on you and say, hey, instead of doing X, Y, Z and throwing it away or whatever, why don't you roll out here? And if he's in the right coaching staff, which we know he is because he's followed his own coach up to a higher level, they can work with him a little bit as he grows as a passer to be a little bit more of a rushing threat as well. My one, cold water moment would be 9 interceptions, not terrible, especially when you got 34 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions at a lower level brings me a little bit of concern. Like you said, Cory, he might have a slow start as he adjusts to some of these better defenses and, smarter, more cerebral defensive coordinators that are game planning against him. So just something to keep tabs on, but we're obviously high on him. We've had him, we did our updated tiers a couple months ago. He was in our top 10 for both of us. He's a quarterback we're really looking forward to in the future. I just wouldn't quite write him off as the next, Mendoza or something like that yet, but certainly a fantastic pick. And I'm glad that we let off the conversation with him. And now, before we jump to our next one, I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk about this episode's sponsor. There is a fantastic new app coming out, currently in the works. I believe it's on iOS and it's in a beta version on Android. This app is called BlueChip, and BlueChip is the future of both Devy and C2C content. Because right now, if you're listening to this, you probably know Devy is extremely hard to strategize for as a commissioner, especially. A lot of people are doing maybe draft your IDP players and use those as your Devy picks on Sleeper. Maybe have an entirely separate spreadsheet to do your Devy players. If you're doing C2C, you have to have an entirely different platform to host your college football side. BlueChip is going to combine all that into one beautiful app. Our guy Will Stone has been pouring his heart and soul into this, and he is happy to partner with the Devy Dojo. So like Dustin said at the beginning of the episode, reach out to us, join our Discord. You'll be able to get in on the action for this soon-to-be well-known app, BlueChip.
Yes,
And
sir.
now,
Yeah, I took Drew Mestemaker in like the second round of this last C2C draft that we did on there.
No, and it looks good too. I mean, the interface looks really nice. I love what they're doing. I'm going to be very happy to be done with all the spreadsheets I constantly have to update and look at to keep everything in order in all these Devy drafts.
Yeah,
so no, I love what they're doing.
This is a godsend. So we can't wait for the future of BlueChip. And now we go to our next prospect. This was the guy that I picked, and it's the same exact scenario. This is Caleb Hawkins, the running back at North Texas last year, much like Mestemaker, has transferred to Oklahoma State. And he was, much like Mestemaker, one of the best running backs in college. You know, in his own position, he absolutely dominated this year, almost 1,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, chipped in a good bit on the receiving side as well. And we're going to have a lot of the same question marks, right? This elevated game. I feel like that matters a little bit less with running backs, especially when you can watch the tape and see what he's doing. And all of the analytics, you know, I'm an analytics guy. They're all pointing in his direction. The arrow is flying up, but he's just so much fun to watch. And I can't wait to see him take the reins there at Oklahoma State. So we're very excited to see what the future of this offense looks like. It's not often you get a situation where an entire offense moves up to the same team and plays against better competition. And like Dustin alluded to, as we've condensed from a Power 5 to a Power 4 scenario in college football, the the Big 12 has gotten better. There are better teams there than there might have been, 10 years ago when we kind of wrote them off as one of the lesser of the, everybody's always talking about Big 10 and SEC. And of course, those are the premier teams, but the ACC and the Big 12 do have some really good programs, as we saw with Miami here in the national championship. And we see a lot of these Big 12 teams making noise regularly as well. So just because they lost Texas and Oklahoma doesn't mean this isn't a competitive division. So Caleb's got a real shot here to show his stuff. Very shifty. Missed tackles forced is one of our favorite metrics here on the dojo, as you probably know from listening to us. He dominated in that this year. I believe he was at one point top 5, and then I think he finished top 10 in the entire nation. He would have been a very coveted person if he was in this draft, considering how lowly ranked we have a lot of these running backs. And now he's got a chance to move up and show his stuff at a higher level before the ultimate path to the NFL.
No, I love that pick. Same reasons that I love the Drew Mestemaker pick. He's a guy that I'm really interested to see how he kind of develops the next level too. A little bit of a high cut runner. You see that with some of these taller running backs as well. I don't know how sudden I feel like the movements are, but I mean, this guy was ripping off big gains at an easy pace. I think it was number 2 in 10+ yard plays, which you just love to see that consistency that he's able to keep producing large chunks every down. And, he's still a young back, so everything is still probably a little bit of a process for him right now. It's a good conference to do it into. I know they're getting a little bit better, but it's also, they got some lighthearted defenses in the Big 12 as well. So he should be able to hopefully find his path. And, like my guy up top, if he just kind of slower start at the gate, they might just rely on this running game a little bit. So I think that we could see a lot of him, maybe not to the expectations people are hoping for, but I think we'll see a lot of Caleb Hawkins next year.
Yeah, as we should. I had a lot of fun watching him this season. I watched a lot of North Texas just because of, Wyatt Young too, a guy, spoiler alert, we aren't going to talk about that teammate here tonight, but we probably could have talked about all 3 of them. So I did watch a lot of North Texas last year. And I mean, Chris, he actually was 4th in the country in missed tackles forced.
Look at that. I should update my numbers. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, man, those are rookie numbers, baby. You gotta bump them up. The thing, like you mentioned, Cory, high cut runner. I think sometimes, naturally he could kind of be standing up a little upright. Mm-hmm. More and more though, I'm seeing runners do that, and it doesn't really bother me as much anymore. But I'm very excited to see what he can do. I love his story as well, because as we know, under recruited guy from Oklahoma, he got passed up by OU and Oklahoma State there. And he called this like a full circle moment, being able to go to Oklahoma State now and go rep those colors, man. So just really excited to see what he's able to do. I believe he set the freshman record with 29 touchdowns combined this season. So, I mean, that offense was humming, and that having the familiarity in the system, he's going to be able to go out there and dominate, man. So my guy Chris was onto him pretty early. Remember Chris on Substack? He did that article, Hawkins versus Hawkins.
I did, yeah. Him and Marcellus Hawkins, who's another guy who's still flying under the radar. So make sure you subscribe to our Substack so you can get in on the action a little bit early. But back then I had talked about he's fun to watch. He's not afraid to plow through guys if he needs to. So he's got a little bit of power to his game, and it's tough to scout when you're scouting at those lower levels. But I had said at the time, it's almost like with his poor offensive line play, that's actually kind of a good thing for him because he can show his stuff a little bit more. I equated it. I don't know if you guys watch any baseball or if any of your listeners do, but years ago, I had heard that Cuban outfielders were told to not make plays on the ball so that they could show off their cannon arms, which, we saw from a lot of those, like Yoenis Cespedes and some of those other guys. It's kind of the same thing, right? If you have a mismatch somewhere in the offensive game, in this case, the offensive line, it lets you show off more of your overall talent. And he showed us a good bit this year. So looking forward to seeing him at a higher level coming up.
For sure. Cory, I got a quick question for you before we move on about him, because he's getting really steamed up, in CFF drafts and C2C. He's going really early. Is he a guy that you're looking to move right now, or are you holding on to him? Because, even reports at a spring camp right now, they're already comparing him to Ollie Gordon and stuff like that. So is this a good time for you to move on, or are you holding on to him?
I'll tell you what, there's always a point, especially with running backs. I really do think you have to thread the needle really finely to hit on a lot of these running backs. And there's a lot of running backs that I'm excited about, but you can't really ask for much better than this freshman season. I think right now, honestly, I want to hold, and I know that might be the wrong way to play it. I think the smart Dynasty player would tell you that you should probably sell high on a running back because of that needle that they have to thread to make success at the next level. But I think I just want to see it play out. And I think he has enough years right now to allow yourself to let it play out a little bit, where if he kind of bums a little bit this year, I think you'll still have opportunities to sell him next year. People kind of buy into the bounce back. Maybe he transfers to somewhere else. People make excuses for the offense not being so good, whatever. I still think that he's young enough in his career that I kind of just want to see it play out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm firmly holding. He's just so much fun to watch, and you don't want to sell yourself short on that ticket,
Yeah.
Hang on him and see what can happen. Next up, we have Mr. Nick Marsh, who is a guy that Dustin selected, and Dustin's also been high on for quite a while. He's been the drum beater here at the dojo for Nick Marsh. And if you look at the stats on the screen right now, 59 receptions, 662 yards, 6 touchdowns. His PFF receiving grade wasn't exactly great, but he's coming from an offense that wasn't great either. And now he's going an offense that's going to produce 2 very early draft picks at the wide receiver position and just won a national title at Indiana. So he's somebody who I've been taking a lot higher on BlueChip and all these other CFF formats recently, just to get my hands on him, because if he's going to be the go-to guy for Josh Hoover at Indiana this year, it's going to be wheels up, and he's naturally talented for sure. So Sensei, I'll let you talk a little bit about him since he's your man.
Yeah, man, he's my man. He's got the right body type, 6'3", 200 pounds. That's my type, Chris. And like another wide receiver that I'm going to talk about later, he's a good example of being able to escape like this hellacious ecosystem there in Michigan State. And look, he's a Michigan man. He was born in Detroit. And I think he gave it his all there at Michigan State, but it just wasn't going to work out there with Aiden Childs. And he was able to extend and make some plays. I'm really excited to see him go to Indiana, though, with Curt Cignetti. I think he obviously profiles as the outside X wide receiver that we just saw Elijah Surratt play. And Elijah Surratt had 15 touchdowns. Now, he doesn't have Fernando Mendoza throwing him the ball, but he does have fellow transfer Josh Hoover coming in. And that's somebody that, Cory, I know you're still pretty high on. And I think that his skill set is going to be able to. Yeah. Hey, me too, man.
Yeah.
I think that his skill set really complements what Josh Hoover wants to do well. Nick Marsh, he's got underrated vertical speed. I think that he can win at all 3 levels. You just weren't able to see it at all times, but obviously can go up and catch it at the highest point. He does a lot of really good things that are just going to mix well there. But something that I actually found out today as I was just doing a little more research into him, he actually went through some hardship as a child. And here at the dojo, we always talk about what you go through molds you, how these adversities that you overcome in life shape you as not only a man, but as a football player. And he grew up homeless as a child, grew up without water and basic living utilities, things of that nature. And you really see that grit and that determination come out when he plays on the football field. I saw, a couple times like versus OU, where he was just knocking dudes over, he's stiff arming them, doing everything that he can to continue to advance, to get the first down, doing everything that he could, man, even against Indiana a couple times. I tweeted out today, like, this play right here is the moment that Curt Cignetti saw him and was like, I'm gonna get that man in the transfer portal. So I just love stories like this, and that doesn't really have much to do with fantasy, but when you're betting on human beings, the most variable creature in the entire world, these things matter. That makeup and what makes them, what makes them tick really does matter to me. So I just found that interesting. I think that even with all that he went through at Michigan State, he kept his head down. He kept fighting. Coaches there talked about his work ethic and talking about, his second game as a true freshman, that breakout game versus Maryland, where he had 8 catches, 194 yards, and a touchdown. His positional coach said, you would have thought that he only caught 1 pass that entire game because he was sitting at the front row. He was taking notes. He was staying late at practice. And so that's the type of player that is now going to go play for Curt Cignetti. And I think, like I said a million times, he just profiles as like that next guy that's going to be able to step up and be an immediate producer. And I don't think Indiana is really going to skip a beat because they got this young man here, Nick Marsh. So Cory, what are your thoughts on him, man? I'm interested because I don't think we've ever really talked about Nick Marsh together.
No, and I mean, you mentioned his speed, and I just wanted to say, we have some pretty smart teams over at campus of Canton. We have a side of our recruiting team that does, if anybody ever knows the Real Analytics Twitter handle, they have a website too, where they do like miles per hour testing off of video, and they have like a formula for it and stuff. And our team knows how to do that as well. So we have like miles per hour times on a lot of these guys. He's got one of the higher ones especially for his size. He's over 21 miles per hour. We've got him clocked at a vertical speed. So he's as prototypical as it gets with his size. I even thought that because of these struggles with Childs and I can't even Vigilovic or something like that they had at the other quarterback there, a lot more shorter passes, and we got to see a little bit more after the catch this year. I thought after that being an area that I kind of dinged him on as a freshman a little bit, I like this landing spot. Indiana, like you were talking about, loses Cooper, loses Surratt. Both 800-yard receivers. They return, Charlie Becker, but he probably makes really well for a flanker type. You throw Nick Marsh in the X running, Elijah Surratt's route tree, and I think he can do even a little bit more than Elijah Surratt. And, you alluded to it, Josh Hoover. And before I go, say everybody thinking that I think Josh Hoover's a first-round pick. Look, I love Josh Hoover's game. I think he's a really great college quarterback. I think he does have a future at the NFL, but he's kind of missing some of the traits to be like a first-round quarterback. But still, don't be surprised if you see Josh Hoover being like that next Ryan Fitzpatrick, that next Brock Purdy, that next Gardner Minshew type, whatever, to surprise us with those low traits and that low draft capital. I'm telling you, I think he's got a really good mind for the game. But he helped make Eric McAllister last year, 1,000-yard receiver, Jack Beck, 1,000-yard receiver the year before. So he's a very good wide receiver, very productive. I think Nick Marsh has some, the size is a little bit different, but I think he's got some Nico Collins to him with the way he wins at his game. So I think that he translates really well to the next level. I'm excited to see what he's going to do here.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Josh Hoover as well, because he's not on our list here today, but I didn't scout him specifically, but I scouted Eric McAllister for our rookie guide. And Hoover makes some absolutely beautiful throws, like some pinpoint, ridiculous, accurate throws. And I think with going to Indiana, he's obviously going to a coach who knows how to turn these guys into decent quarterbacks, as we can see from Mendoza about to be the 101 in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, being able to get the ball in his hands and getting some more work after the catch, yards after the catch there. He had 28 missed tackles forced this season, which was 4th best in the country for wide receivers. So kind of points to that. I know missed tackles forced aren't always the biggest thing for wide receivers, but again, man, I saw it on tape plenty of times this season where he was just stiff-arming dudes.
That's a high number for wide receivers too.
Yeah, it is. It was only behind like Malachi Toney, Mario Craver, and wide receivers of that nature.
And next up, we have one of the least flashy names on this that we're going to discuss here today, but also maybe the most flashy transfer destination, because obviously we have Lane Kiffin going to LSU, and now we have Jayce Brown following him there, as well as the guy we're about to mention here right after, throwing him the football. So Jayce Brown coming from Kansas State, not a terrible year too from a Kansas State point of view. 6'0", 179 pounds, 41 receptions, 712 yards, 5 touchdowns. So he could add maybe a little bit more weight. He's one of those guys that we talk about being a little bit undersized. Maybe you need a little bit more on your muscle mass to be functional at the NFL level, but he's going to have an opportunity to hit a very, very high caliber weight room down there in Baton Rouge. So we'll see what the future holds for Jayce Brown, but he's got all the opportunity in the world to be the next wide receiver one for Sam Leavitt.
Yeah, no, and this was kind of, when I first attacked the idea of the show, but I was trying to think of like the guy that I think could be one of the biggest risers, like take the biggest jump in rankings. And for a guy who's probably lowly ranked for a lot of guys right now, I think Jayce Brown's going to be that guy. And, you even talked about his size and stuff. I think he kind of fits in with a lot of modern day wide receivers right now. From your Garrett Wilson to your Stephon Diggs to guys of that size. I think this is a really sneaky transfer up for a guy who, was pretty impressive under the radar at Kansas State. He's a do-it-all guy for them. Ran routes at all three levels of the field. They would even scheme some touches to him. I mean, you watch this guy go for a 25-yard end around touchdown. Our team has him clocked over 21 miles per hour as well. One of the biggest things to me that popped out on tape was his footwork. Very smooth. He plays around with some tempo. This gave me shades of that comp I talked about, Stephon Diggs type, where the way he can move around and the way he runs his routes. He can play inside, outside. He really did it all for Kansas State. The biggest issue was just being held back by the quarterback play at Kansas State. Avery Johnson, fantastic athlete, just not a great quarterback with ball placement and accuracy. They tried to get the ball in his hands on a lot of occasions as well. Let him try to make some easy yards so they wouldn't have to ask Avery to get it there all the time. But there was a lot of hospital balls, a lot of bad coverage shots that he probably shouldn't have been taking. But the good thing is, even for a smaller guy, at 6 foot, 108 pounds, like you said, he's brought in over 50% of his contested targets through his career. So 14 of 25 targets. He's actually proven to be a pretty good player at all three levels. Healthy 14-yard ADOT for his career too. Not necessarily all the short area stuff, but because of that situation, the box score doesn't really jump out at you. Past 2 years, he led the team, but only 700 yards last year, 800 yards the year prior. But that, just to speak to the efficiency of it, this guy's earned over 2 yards per out run in every single season. Even as a true freshman, was at 2.93 just this past year. And now you're talking about going over to LSU, who is completely reworking their entire offense with Sam Leavitt, Lane Kiffin. We saw what Leavitt was able to do for a guy like Jordan Tyson over at Arizona State. We've seen what Kiffin could do over at Ole Miss. Top 5 offense in the SEC since 2020. Has developed wide receivers like Elijah Moore, Trey Harris, Jonathan Mingo. I know that's not the most star-studded list, but those guys were all 1,000+ yard receivers. So I think Brown is bound to become the wide receiver one in this offense, probably put up similar numbers with that versatile skill set. So I think this could be a huge move for him in his draft stock as kind of a sneaky sleeper to climb up.
I don't think it's that sneaky. I'm a big fan of Jayce Brown too. He's not the traditional body type of wide receiver that I like, but shout out to our guy Spencer in the Discord. He and I had been talking about Jayce Brown going back to last year as week 1 started, that the Farmageddon game that was on. And that was the game that we saw that end around for a big touchdown. Avery Johnson just not able to get it done. Let's get Jayce Brown the football. I believe even the year prior he had gotten some work out of the backfield, if I believe, but he's just a big time play waiting to happen at any moment. And I know I'm very familiar with Lane Kiffin, former head coach of my Trojans. Mm-hmm. This is the exact type of player that he likes. He likes these guys that he can scheme up and just really weaponize out there on the football field. And I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but Jayce Brown is deciding to wear number 1. And of course, when we think number 1 at LSU, that's my guy, Jamar Chase. Now, I'm not saying he's Jamar Chase, so don't kill me in the comments now. But I do know that he's very explosive, and he is a perfect fit for what Lane Kiffin is going to want to do out there. And of course, Lane Kiffin is going to develop a very good run game, something that we were clamoring for LSU to do last year with Caden Durham and Harlan Berry. Let's get a consistent run game going, play good defense, and then, we're going to be able to attack consistently, more efficiently. And that's going to be the biggest thing. I think you're going to see more efficiency from Jayce Brown. And he was already efficient. You pointed to the 2.93 yards per route run. But now if we have a solid team around him, a quarterback and Sam Leavitt that can feed him, man, it's wheels up. And going to LSU, a.k.a. wide receiver U, he just kind of profiles as that next guy. Obviously, he's not really going to get any work outside. I think primarily 70% of his alignment was in the slot. You're going to see a lot more of that. And of course, didn't they bring Winston Watkins over there as well? They got a pretty diverse set of receivers there. But I'm really excited to see this team. They gave Lane Kiffin a lot of money. So, we got to be ready, man. SEC territory, they'll be ready to run you out if you're not winning games.
No, veteran guy, not Eric Singleton. who's the LSU? Eugene Wilson is the other guy. Trey Wilson that came, very short area type guy. I think it really lines up for him to kind of get the most expansive career. I'm not surprised to hear that you're talking about it with somebody else. Like I said, I love getting on shows with smart guys like you because he has kind of been a quiet guy behind the scenes that I've seen a lot of Devy people talking about that I've kind of just noticed his game. You know, there wasn't a lot of flash over at Kansas State, but if you actually watched it or you had some guys on your CFF team and you managed to watch it, your eye was being caught by what Jayce Brown was doing every week. So nice. It's going to be a nice change for him to get to play at LSU in a much better situation for him.
Absolutely, and with a much better quarterback. And I know you didn't want to compare him to Jamar Chase, Dustin, and I don't want to compare him to Jordan Tyson, but we saw what Leavitt and Tyson did in 2024 together when they were both healthy. And there's a real opportunity now for Leavitt to have a bounce back season of his own because it wasn't a great year. It was pretty clear that he was hampered by injury even when he was playing the game. That's a good reason I think that Tyson's flying under the radar now as well, because it was just overall, through October was poor QB play because he was fighting off some injury. So he's got a chance now after sitting out the remainder of the season to rebound his value, rehab, and transfer to LSU and play in that prolific offense with a whole bunch of new bodies around him throwing the ball too. So yes, Sam Leavitt, new quarterback at LSU, 6'2", 205 pounds. He ended up with 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 306 and 3 on the ground. So he does have a little bit of that dual threat action, a little bit of that quarterback movement that you want to see out of these college guys. And I think that he's got a real good shot to remind everybody who he is and who he was here at LSU playing against some really good defenses.
No, I love that call. I mean, it goes right along with what I'm thinking here. And Sam Leavitt's been a guy that I've had high in my rankings for years now. I mean, I didn't even really take him out last year. I was giving him excuses kind of for the injury as well last year. And I mean, you look at the year prior where they kind of had that Cinderella run through the playoffs until they had that eventual loss to Texas, I think, right close to the end there. What I loved about that, which is one of the most narrative-based things I know, but I love it about quarterbacks, is he lost Jordan Tyson for that playoff stretch, and he raised the team around him, whether it was he had to take off with his legs running himself, whether it was just using other wide receivers. I know Scatabo was a big part of that too, but I just love to see that from him and a guy who can kind of just will the team better around him. I mean, this is what Tom Brady did for years with the wide receivers he had. This is what we've seen Peyton Manning do with kind of like, this is what you see from great quarterbacks, getting the best out of the players around them. And I kind of saw that with Sam Leavitt there. I know it was a little bit disappointing last year, but I think he'll have a big bounce back this year, especially with the surrounding talent. And I mean, Kiffin is just known for, very productive quarterback. I know the scheme is going to be a little bit simpler on that end of things, but it's going to be able to maximize what we're going to see from Sam Leavitt.
Yep. And again, an underrated runner, right? I mean, he's tough as nails, man. He's just a leader. And I'm glad you touched on it because that was my biggest point is you can't be a great quarterback. You can't be a guy that makes it in the NFL if you're not able to elevate the talent around you. So I love that you touched on that because that was one of my biggest speaking points on him. It's unfortunate that he did have that injury. What was it? A Lisfranc injury took him out for the rest of the season, man. What could have been with him and Tyson? If we could have gotten one more final good season with those two, man, going into the season, I was very high on Sam Leavitt. Corey, I think we were in a Devy draft and I believe you sniped me on Sam Leavitt. I was pretty mad, man. You didn't hear me, but I was cussing you out under my breath. I was like, this damn dude.
Yeah, we would have a lot less people arguing if Tyson should be wide receiver 1 or not if he had just played the full season or whatever. I think, Tyson, I mean, my wide receiver 1 clear as day. I definitely think what Chris was saying, I mean, being held back by the play, I think, there's even a possibility he milked that hammy, looking at Jeff Sims on the other side, throwing him hospital balls. He's like, I'm just going to play it safe here and try to be as good as I can for when the time comes, So, I definitely agree with all those points.
Yeah, Leavitt, not really much of a turnover threat. He doesn't have too many interceptions. I think only 11 interceptions in his career. He maintains the ball well. And like you said, he plays better under pressure. I think he shows up better in those games where he needs to be better. And that's something that, speaks volumes to the kind of, leader and quarterback that he is. So between these both guys and everything else that they got going on down there at LSU, it's going to be a fun year for sure. Moving on to another quarterback. This is a guy who I feel like almost should have come into the draft this year, but if you're going to transfer anywhere as a quarterback, it's going to be Miami, right? We've seen what Miami can do with a lot of these guys. Carson Beck maybe fell off a little bit after his earlier start this season, but he's still going to be one of the top 5 to 8 names, I think, to watch in the NFL draft. He's surely going to get drafted somewhere, and he's going to have an opportunity in an NFL locker room. Cam Ward obviously was the 101 before that. What they're doing in Miami is really rehabbing these quarterbacks and making them the best possible versions of themselves. And Mensah, I think, is already a very, very good version of himself, right? He was fantastic this year, almost 4,000 yards passing, 34 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. He looked really good. And albeit he was playing at Duke, but this is maybe my biggest exciting transfer on this list.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty bullish on him, man. As you know, I'm working on an article for him on Substack, and yeah, I'm trying to contain myself, Chris, because I'm a little bit of a golden retriever sometimes when I fall in love with these guys, but so trying to contain it. But Darian Mensah might have began his career as like this overlooked recruit, but now he's shaping up to be, like you said, the next big hit at Miami. Just a 2-star recruit at a high school with only one FBS offer from Tulane. Look, he took that gamble on himself, traveled over 2,000 miles away from home, and I thought he looked terrific in 2024. I believe Tulane went 9-4. They won the AAC championship game. And then he went, of course, and transferred to Duke. And that's where he really broke out this last season. He set school records for passing yards and touchdowns. I love his deep ball. I'm a sucker for a guy that can throw with that anticipation and touch, like dropping it into the bucket for Cooper Barkate down the field. It really got me revved up. He knows how to place those deep shots, and he could throw with varying levels of torque. He's better at pocket manipulation than I first gave him credit for. And the thing that stood out most to me, though, was the ability to handle the blitz. His post-snap processing, I think, is some of the best that I've seen from a young quarterback at this stage in their career. Being able to get the ball out. He had 22 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions against the blitz this season. So, I mean, that tells you everything that you need to know. He's a little bit of a home run hitter, right? Like, even I won't say that he's necessarily super athletic, but he's athletic enough to get out of the pocket. He's looking down the field, looking to continue to make a play, but he's always looking for that deep shot. So just kind of because of that and the sheer volume of passing attempts that they took at Duke, he took a lot of sacks. But what he does well, I think, is going to fit very well with Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator there for Miami. We know they're going to want to throw the ball. They've got a great offensive line that's going to give him time in the pocket to hit those deep shots. And of course, he's got Malachi Toney right there. I mean, Malachi Toney can win in a number of ways, but we know that he's going to be able to win on those shallow routes, right? The low ADOT stuff too, and be able to make magic with the ball in his hands. And I think that's going to be able to help Mensah instead of always looking deep down the field. When he's got to give it up, when he's got to throw it underneath, there's going to be a guy named Malachi Toney there. And of course, his teammate from Duke, Cooper Barkate, did transfer to Miami as well. So there's a lot of familiarity there. I just think that Miami has positioned themselves now to compete for a national title once again. They're returning a lot of key starters there on the offense, and it's going to be like, let's go. If they got that much efficiency and that get a quarterback play from Carson Beck, I really think that Darian Mensah could potentially take them to that next level. And the best thing about this is he doesn't have to declare for the draft after this. He's still got another year of eligibility left. So, I mean, if he wants to stay and run it back, that's always a possibility too. But he's somebody that I bought in really, really early there at Tulane, and I'm very happy that I did. It's kind of, the new age college where this third team. But, I love what he's been able to do, and he's just positioned himself to really, really elevate his draft stock. And that's why I chose him here.
No, it's a good call. And I love how you touched on the placement and some of the accuracy that he has too. I think it was the Clemson game. I think it was a huge game that they had this past year where I think both teams scored 30, close to 40 points, went right down to the wire. That was the first game I really took notice of. You don't see this from quarterbacks a lot in college, but the anticipation and the ability to lead the receivers, on some of those crossing routes, on some of those like scissor routes, like being able to not just put it right on him. A lot of guys the ball will end up behind, it'll end up low, it'll end up high. His ability to kind of lay it out in front of him to let the guy continue running was one of the things that like first jumped out at me. So I think he reads the field really well, like you're talking about post snap. I think he does a lot of good stuff really well. I was questioning the arm talent with him a little bit sometimes. And then I saw some nice throws where he almost rips it like 55 yards from standing still near the back of his end zone where he's almost hitting the middle of the field. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's just something where, maybe if he doesn't get the proper torque or whatever, that sometimes it can die out on a little bit on him on the move or whatever. But when he gets like everything fundamentally straight, that guy can rip it pretty good. So I actually like this call. I love him climbing up to Miami here. I think that's going to do well for him. I know Chris said I thought he should have gone to the draft. I think this is probably actually better for him. I think that the talent around him is better. The national attention will be better. You're going to have Mark Fletcher as well as your running back there, keeping defenses honest with you as well. So I think this is going to be great for his draft stock, and might even be a guy floating around with that back of first, early second type potential draft round pick next year.
Yeah, and he's going to need to be a very good passer because he is not a threat to run the ball at all. I didn't even put his rushing stats on this graphic because he's, which is shocking because even the picture we have here, he's on the run, he's making the throw. I think he throws pretty well on the run, when he needs to do a little bit of scrambling. He's got some halfway decent footwork and getting out of pressure situations and still delivering an accurate ball, but he is not at all a threat, a modern NFL dual threat rushing quarterback, which does put a little bit of hamper on his overall Devy stock because a lot of these guys, when you're a top 12 quarterback at the NFL level in fantasy, it's because you got wheels for the most part, right? We see it year after year. 8 or 9 of those guys are putting up a lot on the ground to, get up to that point. And that's what you want. You want fantasy points when you're putting a quarterback in your lineup. So not something he's going to ever bring to the table, unfortunately, but he is an exceptional passer. So looking forward to seeing how he can raise his stock at Miami like other guys have done before him. Next up, we're circling back to Cory. This is one of Cory's picks, and this is a player who was, I should say, right in Dustin's backyard, playing at Colorado last year and transferring to ASU. It's Omarion Miller, 6'2", 210 pounds, 45 receptions, 808 yards, and 8 TDs. He loves those 8s this year, and a 71.5 receiving grade from Pro Football Focus. So let us know exactly why you wanted to discuss Omarion Miller here today. I know you've already kind of told your pitch on why you're selecting some of these guys.
Yeah, this is a bit of a my guy for me, but that's what this is all about, right? We got to have some guys that we really love.
Absolutely.
And again, another guy that I think will be from the pits of nothing to be able to jump up here and finally get some of that attention. We have a Devy guide every year at Campus to Canton, and I've had the pleasure of writing up Omarion for the past few years, and he's just a really interesting case, okay? Again, a nice-sized kid like you were talking about, 6'2", 210 pounds. This is a guy who broke, we have the year 1 0 theory. He broke it as a freshman at Colorado with some really gaudy numbers. And Dustin, being a USC fan, you might remember this. He had a 196-yard performance against USC. It was the most receiving yards in the game by a freshman in Colorado history. It was honestly one of the best single-game performances I've ever seen from a freshman. From the diversity of his route tree, from the highlight reel catches, separation. He was I fell in love from that one game, and he flashed again in a couple other games as well. But the story of his career has mainly been injuries. He only played more than 20 snaps 4 times as a freshman. He only played 6 games as a sophomore, but flashed that season as well. 4.25 yards per route run. 4.25. That's a high number. And then when he finally played the majority of the season last year as a junior, Colorado was rotating 3, really bad quarterbacks. All were equally as awful. Caden Salter was one of them. Some other guy, and true freshman Julian Lewis, who I'm not saying Julian Lewis can't become anything, but it's a true freshman. You tried to work him in. You tried to. It just wasn't what you probably would have hoped for his situation. So you saw a lot of easier looks from him. You saw not a very diverse route tree, but he was still able to shine. 800 yards, 8 touchdowns, over 60% contested catch rate, 2.5 yards per route run, the body control, the concentration, the spatial awareness. It was good enough for him to be I think he was a top 3 ranked wide receiver in the transfer portal when he entered behind Marsh and Coleman, which was surprising to me but it also gave me some confidence that I might not be over evaluating what I'm seeing. I think the masses, in the recruiting masses, whatever, kind of know he might be a hidden talent waiting to be unleashed. And to me, I think his game kind of thrives as an intermediate to deep threat. You can still use him short and he does well enough, but I think he really thrives on those deep outs, the scissors, the digs, the skinny posts, the corners, the verticals, some of those deeper comebacks. It really syncs up nice as an outside threat. And my comparison has always been Brandon Aiyuk, which is funny now because he goes over to Ayuk's alma mater in Arizona State. And we saw what Jordan Tyson just did there. They've got a good offensive mind with Kenny Dillingham as well, who's had a good record with wide receivers. And the biggest question obviously is going to be quarterback play. It's really up in the air for him right now. Looks like it's going to be Cutter Boley, a guy from Kentucky, really turnover-worthy prone as a first-year starter last year. They got Mikey Keene, a veteran, some young guys, Cameron Dyer and Jake Fett, true freshmen. Very, very unsettled. But I will just say I have faith in Dillingham to get the best out of one of these guys and hopefully do enough to get Omarion the recognition he finally deserves and send him off to the draft in style.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up that nightmare of a game for me versus USC. It was damn near 200 yards, man. Like this
Yeah.
dude was going off, and I mean, I was sitting there mad, like typical USC defense, man. We're letting this freshman just go off, but he
Yeah.
definitely caught my attention. And me living here in Colorado, I was able to see him. Got to see him live a couple times as well. When he's healthy, he is so electric out there. 6'2", 215 pounds approximately, according to PFF. He plays bigger than that sometimes. You saw a couple times where he'd get the ball and he knocked a dude over and you think he's down, but he's not. Like he gets up and he takes it to the house. So if we can keep him healthy, if Cutter Boley or whoever is going to be quarterback there for Arizona State this year can just feed him the ball, then I love this call, Cory, because I think that he absolutely is one that can really elevate that draft stock. We know the talent's there. It's always been evident, just in spurts and flashes that we have been able to see. Now it's, can he put it all together and remain healthy for a season? It's a legitimate concern. It's a true knock. But man, you cannot deny the talent out there. And I love the move. Get away from Colorado. I love Deion Sanders as a person, not sold on him as a coach and what he's doing out there at CU, but that's okay because it's FCU over here. But let's go with Kenny Dillingham. Let's develop and take that next step. I think it was a really good career call for him. I do wonder what his career would have looked like if he had gone to some of those other big programs that were courting him as a recruit. We know his story, and then he ultimately decided to go to Colorado there. But I do always wonder, like in the back of my head, what could have been? What if he did go to LSU? What if he did go to whatever? I forget the other teams that were courting him, but that would have been really interesting. But very smart career move, I think, to go to a very good offensive mind in Kenny Dillingham.
No, yeah, and it would have been nice to see what his career would have started like differently. But I do like that the NFL seems to have their eyes on Arizona State. I mean, they're running backs from, I want to say Benjamin, but he was more of a Devy talent back in the day. But Cam Scatabo was there, and then even wide receivers like Aiyuk, N'Keal Harry was a first round pick. I mean, Frank Darby back in the day even had some eyes. So it's just nice to know that NFL eyes are there. So I think he will get at least some of the attention that I hope he's going to get. I hope he deserves, anyways.
Yeah, and he finished the season pretty strong too. Both of his 100-yard games this year came in November. So he's been picking up his game as the year went along. And actually, he had a pretty poor game against Arizona State, which to me could be a good thing because that means if Dillingham knows, how to stop him, that means he knows his strengths and his weaknesses, so he can utilize those to the max. So he's transferring to, maybe that's just me pulling out of thin air, pulling something out of my hat there, but I do like this transfer for him, and obviously you've said it. There's been so many good receivers coming out of that program, so he could be the next. Moving along to Justice Haynes. This was one of my selections, and we've been very high on Justice Haynes at the dojo for a while now, and he sure showed us this year why we were high on him because he had a really productive year at Michigan, even when he was mostly splitting carries with Jordan Marshall. This is the only transfer on this list that's kind of transferring down instead of transferring up. So something that you have to question. It's given a little bit of pause there. He had the opportunity to go to the NFL, and he decided, I'm going to go to Georgia Tech instead. But that is a program that's had some really good running backs recently and put up a lot of yards. And as I mentioned before with Caleb Hawkins, it doesn't necessarily matter for these running backs. I think it's a lot different when you're showing your stuff on the ground versus as a quarterback or a wide receiver, because you're really just trying to show off your talent for the most part. And he's going to have every opportunity to show off his stuff at Georgia Tech. 5'11", 210 pounds. He had 121 carries for 857 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. And that surely would have been higher if he didn't get hurt. So he didn't play the last few games, and he had to sit out the rest of the season. But he would have been well over the 1,000-yard mark if he had a chance to play. And it seemed like he was ripping off 100-yard games every time he was out there touching the ball for a little while. So an extremely talented player, super fast. I know you've been talking a lot about miles per hour. I'm pretty sure he hit 22 at one point this season. The guy is very fast, and he's going to have the opportunity to show that off down there at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I think people have been down on this place that he went to, and I've kind of talked myself into it being okay. Like for anybody who doesn't know, this is a home going home for him, so he went home. Easy conference for him to rack up those points as well. Plenty of running backs go nuts on bad teams. Like I know Georgia Tech is kind of in flux. They lost a lot. They lost their OC, their potential quarterback. They've lost their running back. Like I mean, look at Ahmad Hardy last year on Mizzou. Mizzou was a terrible team passing the ball. Emmett Johnson on Nebraska last year. I mean, Nebraska was terrible after Dylan Raiola went down. Like they could barely pass the ball. Antoine Raymond on Rutgers. Like I know he's not a big name, but he's somebody who was crazy productive. Like these guys all very productive on bad teams. And like I love what you said about his skill set. I think, you know, sometimes I worry about the top end gear, but like this guy reminds me of J.K. Dobbins. Like go back and watch this guy and look at like early career J.K. Dobbins. Not like, you know, later career now with the two knees kind of shredded. You don't see as much as like that old OSU J.K. Dobbins I used to see, but that's kind of what I see with Justice Haynes. So I think he's going to put up a massive year. And this guy, as of right now, is my running back 1 for 2027. I guess we're talking now.
Yeah. And look, Justice Haynes is a guy that we've loved for a while. We termed, or our good friend Chev termed the phrase home run Haynes, right? Because he has that ability to take it to the house on any given play. In fact, this year, when he was every game that Justice Haynes was healthy, he rushed for over 100 yards this season. And I'm with you, Cory. I've talked myself into the Georgia Tech landing spot. I think that he's a perfect fit for what Brent Keys wants to do, right? That physical run first identity. And he's going to pair with Malachi Hosley very well. I think they're going to be a really good tandem there. And he's going to look going back home. We don't know the reason why he left. Is it becomes hiders coming in? Was he scared of the competition? Was there some internal issues? I don't know. Maybe one day they'll make a 30 for 30 about it. But all we can do right now is just anticipate and project forward. And I think it's a really good rushing offense for him to showcase his skill set. Maybe he simply just wanted to be closer to home. I don't know. But I do know that I trust the talent and I trust my training. I trust the evaluation on this guy. You know, he has really good vision, I think. I think he gets knocked for it by some, but I've been able to see him look down the field and set up blocks down the field with subtle little wiggle. You know, he's not the most wiggly guy out there. I don't know if that's a good scouting term. He really doesn't, you know, get the ball in his hands in the receiving game very often. I don't know if it's just, he wasn't asked to do it or if he can't do it. So I'm interested to see if maybe he can develop that part of his game going forward. He could have entered the draft. We talk about 2026 being relatively weak at the position. He probably would have been RB2 in this class. Pretty easily for me would have been RB2 of this class. You know, I'll never know. But I think that he wanted to put together a complete season of healthy tape because we know that's always been a question of his, a knock in his profile. So let's see you go out here and in the 2026 football season, put together an entire season where you're able to be healthy and show up and show out, baby. Go get that high-end draft capital. I'm rooting for this kid. I really love him. You know, we love kids with NFL bloodlines. Chris, you're familiar with Verron Haynes, right? Won a Super Bowl. I mean,
right here in Pittsburgh, absolutely. He was a known name around Pittsburgh TV sets on Sundays. You know, I have his receptions there at the bottom, 13 for 50. He's never had a 100-yard receiving season, but I feel like he's a better receiver than they've been using him at Michigan or Alabama. I feel like the opportunity to, you know, maybe get some more passes in his hands at Georgia Tech will be great for his overall draft stock. They can scheme different plays for him out of the backfield to find ways to get the ball in his hands and just let him run amok. So I think that, you know, he shows decent catching ability, and I'd like to see him bump those numbers up a little bit.
You only had an 8-game sample size because we're talking about the draft. Like, I think he was kind of in a hard place there where do I just go with it right now or do I take this NIL money in this day and age? I only have 8 games for him to go off of. I'm not going to be able to do any of the testing throughout the offseason because my ankle might not be completely right. I think coming back was always in his kind of mind after that injury. Georgia Tech may be a little bit surprising, but I think it would have been a little bit harder for him to go through the draft process this year. And I love that you gave Malachi Hosley a shout out. I was honestly super excited for him this year. I think he's sneaky, but now I'm kind of put a damper on him with Haynes coming here. But maybe next year, maybe they're next year.
Hey, I'm in some best ball CFF drafts, and I've been taking Malachi Hosley pretty late. Just, you know, I like him in best ball format for CFF. You know, yeah. I think, you know, we'll see, baby. Maybe you get some touchdowns. You know? But
I've been taking Haynes in the first round of CFF best ball because I want all I could get. You know, even if it's not Devy, if he's just putting up numbers on my college football rosters this year, absolutely, he's going to be a monster. That brings us to our last transfer to talk about today, and this is probably the biggest name on the transfer list, Cam Coleman, who is a Devy darling in himself. You know, I think he was top 2 pick in a lot of Devy ADPs just a year ago. Obviously transferred from Auburn now to Texas, 6'3", 201 pounds. He finished his year with 56 receptions, 708 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And obviously the quarterback rotation down at Auburn wasn't what we had expected. You know, we were hoping we could get somebody the ball, or somebody who could get the ball to Cam Coleman a little bit more efficiently. And he is going to have that opportunity going to Texas, because Arch Manning has gone from being, you know, the prodigal son, the future of the NFL, the bloodlines, to then dipping his, you know, people were a little bit scared of him in the middle of the season. And now we've come full circle. He really showed us at the end of the year how strong he could be as an athlete and as a leader, and especially as a quarterback. And now he's going to have the opportunity to throw to not only Ryan Wingo again, but also Cam Coleman in this upcoming NFL or NCAA season.
Yeah, Cam Coleman might have been a little bit of low-hanging fruit, but I had to talk about him because, again, projecting for the draft, this is a guy that I believe can really vault himself into NFL circles. He's, of course, Chris, you know, he's near and dear to my heart. Cam Coleman is the player behind my saying of aura at the catch point. And again, that's really his superpower. He's able to climb that proverbial ladder and kind of seemingly hang up in the air for a while and come up with that catch that leaves you saying, how in the hell did he come up with that? Like, I still need to see more nuance in his route running. I think that that's an area of his game that needs developed if he's going to take that next step that I think he can get to. That said, I think that he has shown the ability to tempo his routes, sink his hips. I saw him sink his hips on a double move, and even saw him hit a nice stutter go against Oklahoma. He had to come back to an underthrown ball, of course, but he spun around like a ballerina in the air. He used his frame to shield the defender, and he was able to tap his toe in. And of course, we know about his recruiting pedigree, 5-star out of high school, second ranked wide receiver, only behind Jeremiah Smith. And I mentioned Jeremiah Smith because I think that Cam Coleman has just as much upside as Smith. And I don't think that's really much of a hot take. His biggest setback has always been the ecosystem at Auburn. Of course, like I mentioned with Nick Marsh, here at Auburn, we thought that Cam Coleman was going to go off in a Hugh Freeze offense. At least I did when he was initially recruited. Hugh Freeze is somebody that I have a lot of personal ties to in my life. Of course, my good friend Chev was recruited by him, or he was coached. Chev was coached by Hugh Freeze in high school. So got a lot of anecdotal stories and evidence about him as an offensive mind, as a motivator, as a leader of men. So I was really rooting for Hugh Freeze there. It just didn't work out. And of course, he was catching a lot of passes from these mid quarterbacks, from Peyton Thorne to Jackson Arnold. Even some Ashton Daniels got a little play last year as well. And we know Jackson Arnold really struggled with the forward pass. I think that for Texas this season, the biggest question mark for them is going to be offensive line. I think that if they're able to hold up in protection for Arch Manning to hit those deep shots to Cam Coleman, where he's able to show that vertical element to his game and come down with those big time catches, even work a little more intermediate level of the field, I think that it's wheels up. And I've been paying a lot of attention to him as spring camp opens, right? We get all this spring clip propaganda, routes versus air, right? Nobody's defended him. We're like, oh, look at that, man. He's going to go off. But I've really been paying attention to the interviews, specifically Steve Sarkisian, again, former Trojan head coach. I know what an offensive mind he can be, and thankfully he's sober now and doing well in life. But he talked about Cam Coleman, and he said that not only is he the hardest worker, but he's the best player on this team. And I really took a lot away from that because he hasn't spent too much time around the team. And it's already evident to Steve Sarkisian that he's the best player on this team. But another added element, he's the hardest worker on the team. So once, Arch Manning is healthy enough to go out there and start working with this team, throwing the ball with pads on and everything, I'm really looking forward to a big year from this guy. I think we all are. The question is going to be, is Texas going to be able to take that step? Are they going to be able to hit those expectations? And man, if Arch can continue that development, if he can continue to show us what he showed us at the end of the year, and now you have Cam Coleman on the outside, you still got Ryan Wingo out there. You got a number of weapons, so good running backs, and Hollywood Smothers, Rayleigh Brown too is another underrated guy there. They're set up for success, and there's really no excuse for Texas this year. So I'm hoping that this is going to be able to vault Cam Coleman up to that high-end first-round talent, because I got a lot of Cam Coleman on my Devy rosters.
Yeah, and this is kind of like the Romo Dunze kind of archetype from a few years ago, right? Like he was a top 10 pick or top 15. I can't remember exactly where he went, but I mean, it's dominance at the catch point. And like you said, we got to see a little more developed there. But I mean, Jackson Arnold was just terrible last year. We couldn't see we can take away anything from last year. And then at Texas, even last year, they were really sorely missing an X wide receiver. I mean, Ryan Wingo for his size and everything, he works better in like the intermediate and like some scheme touches where you can kind of like bulldoze through guys, like kind of like a Savion Williams type, which is, not what you initially think when you look at him, but they were really missing like that X wide receiver for him to lean on, for him to be able to throw it up to somebody like that. So I love them going out and grabbing Cam Coleman. And let me tell you, like I was telling you, we have an athletic database over at Campus of Canton. Our recruiting team measures these guys. They also go and find any verified numbers that they can find. This guy is 40-yard dash, 4.46. Max miles per hour, 21.2. 3 cone is 6.7 seconds. It's 93rd percentile. His broad is 128th, 89th percentile, and his squat and clean are both over the 90th percentile mark. This guy is like a physical specimen. If he can just put it all together, there's no way that he can't sniff a top 10, top 15 pick in the NFL when his time comes.
Oh, you're spitting.
Yeah, that was brilliant. I love that. And that is really what it's all about, right? Because none of the stats, none of the analytics from this past season are going to jump off the table at you. No. But we're looking at this build and we're saying, what can we project him to be? And much like you said, this is a tall, fast dude. And now he's going to probably the most ideal scenario for him to regain a lot of value. So I'm looking forward to seeing Cam Coleman this year in Texas.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's session in the Devy Dojo. But before we get out of here, Cory, really appreciate you joining us tonight. Go ahead and let the people know where they can find your work and what you've got going on right now.
Yeah, well, you can find me on X, I guess. I still always say Twitter, but at @FF_guitarist. I'm always posting Devy, rookie stuff, college stuff on there constantly. You can always hear me every Wednesday on the Campus Canton podcast feed doing the Back to Devy show, kind of like where the spinoff of this, the title of the show came. And great graphic work on that graphic, by the way. That was some cool stuff there. We're going to be having our guides coming out this season from the website during the off season. We're working on our Devy guide right now. That's going to be coming out, I think, May 1st. We've already got our freshman guide out that came out last month. We're going to be having a CFF guide. Honestly, it's the one-stop shop for everything college. And I mean, I've talked about our athletic database throughout this entire. It's everything that you could want from knowing your college players the best you possibly can without even having to actually watch them. So we'll take care of you over here at Campus Canton. So come check us out.
Hey, I love it, man. You guys do some great work. I have purchased the Devy guide the last few years, the freshman guide too as well. A lot of good information. And again, next week, we're going to be reviewing a Devy startup mock draft with brand new members from the community. So if you want a chance to jump into one of those and potentially be featured on the show, then make sure that you join the free Devy Dojo Discord. When you hop in there, go ahead and say, I'm here to mock. That's going to let us know that you're ready to jump into the next one. All the links you need will be down in the description below and pinned in the comments. So until next time, remember to trust your training.